And let's move into the next topic here on the podcast, and that is Joe Burrow and his NFL draft stock. Before we get into it, I'm going to pitch my Twitter. Go ahead and follow me at Ricky Widmer on Twitter. Reason why is for this draft coverage. This week, I will be dropping my first big board of the season on mostvaluablepodcast.com. We're doing big boards a little bit differently this year. They're going to be articles compared to full podcasts. So go ahead, follow me on Twitter at Ricky Widmer. As soon as it posts, I'm going to put a link up there. So you're going to want to follow me to know when that goes live. And also bookmark mostvaluablepodcast.com so you know when it posts on the website. But we're taking a look at Joe Burrow. And I'll be honest, if I would have done this last week, the title of this video on YouTube was going to be vastly different. Because originally it was, can he be a top 10 pick? Then I thought to myself, well, why don't I ask the question, could he be a top 5 pick? And then I just said, and pardon my language here, but I just said, fuck it. Could Joe Burrow be the number 1 overall pick? Like, let's go balls to the wall here. Let's have this discussion right now. Because the hype machine is going crazy for Joe Burrow. So why not, why not feed into that hype machine? Why not have this discussion now? And I know there's some people out there that'll just want to shut it down. No, Joe Burrow will not be the number 1 overall pick. However, I'm just going to come out. I've got the heavy ammunition in my back pocket. We're just going to come out with it right away. The thing that I cannot help but think about when seeing the rise of Joe Burrow right now and the meteoric rise that he is on, I am seeing that it is, well, I'm not going to say it's exactly the same because this player had a lot of off the field things, well, on the field too, but off the field things and personality things that played into him and part of that rise. But I look at Joe Burrow and I can't help but think about Baker Mayfield. And you may be thinking, Ricky, what are you talking about? They are two different quarterbacks. Baker was outspoken. Baker was cocky. Baker had the swagger, putting the flag in on Ohio State, grabbing the nuts against Kansas. Joe Burrow ain't about that. Joe Burrow ain't that guy. He's a classy guy, a classy Southern gentleman at LSU. I don't even know. Is he from the South? He's not even from the South. He's a Midwestern boy, Athens, Ohio. So I can't even call him a classy Southern gentleman. I guess he is by transplant, but no, his hometown's Athens, Ohio. He's a Midwesterner just like me. But all that aside, I can't help but think about Baker Mayfield. And to put it into perspective, before I get into everything, Joe Burrow right now, let's just lay out the stat line so we got it. His stats, right now he's at 2,484 passing yards. He has 29 touchdowns, 3 INTs. That is phenomenal. He's also got a completion percentage of 79%. I talk about 60 being the magic line where, hey, if you're above 60, you're good. He's at 79%. He's almost at 80. He's 0.6 away from being at 80%. That is phenomenal. If he was taking a test on quarterbacking and completing passes, he'd be getting this close to getting an 80% B on that test. It's my teacher coming out in me. But you look at that to his year before, last year, his junior year, first year at LSU, he's about 400 yards behind what he had last year. Last year total, he had almost 2,900 passing yards. He's already eclipsed the touchdown numbers, only had 16 last year, and he had five interceptions all of last season, and he was only completing 57.8% of his passes. We have seen a jump in Joe Burrow this year, and I know people, the first thing they're going to say, but Ricky, the offense at LSU, it's its own special thing, and how's he going to do outside of that offense? Weren't we saying the same things about Baker Mayfield? Weren't we saying that, oh, it's the Lincoln Riley offense? Away from Lincoln Riley, I don't know if Baker is going to have the same success. I mean, Cleveland's not winning right now, but is Baker a bad quarterback right now? Did Baker not have a really good rookie year? So I want to use Baker Mayfield as the case study for why Joe Burrow can basically have legs when it comes to the race for the number one pick. And the reason why I say that is, let's take a look at Baker Mayfield. Let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine to go back to when Baker was in college. If we look at his stats, his senior year, he had 4,600, just over 4,600 passing yards, which Joe Burrow at this point, I mean, I don't know if he'll get to 4,600. It's a very different offense. It's not that air raid, spread them out offense that Lincoln Riley runs. So I don't know if he's going to get that high. But yet again, completing 70% of his passes, 43 touchdowns to 6 INTs, and every single one. The only difference is Baker Mayfield didn't have as big as a jump between junior to senior year, where if you look at yards, yeah, that was kind of big. 3,900, almost 4,000 to 4,600. The completion percentage went down. He was actually better his junior year, 70.9 to 70.5. Touchdowns only went up by 3, 40 to 43. And interceptions only went down by 2, 8 to 6. Another thing that he did very well was get into the end zone on the ground. He had 6 rushing touchdowns his junior year, 5 rushing touchdowns his senior year. And with Joe Burrow, his rushing totals, last year he had about 400 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Very different Joe Burrow this year. He's actually hasn't even eclipsed 100 yards. He's only had 2 rushing touchdowns, where that's the thing I like. I'm going to save that. I'm going to finish this Baker thought first. When it came to Baker Mayfield, I went back and looked at our big boards from the 2018 season. I looked at the first one. I looked at the last one. And on the first one, this was about December, Brandon had Baker at 9. So 9 overall. 9 out of 25 on his big board. I had Baker at 22. We were 2 vastly different people. Brandon was high. I was a little bit lower on Baker. By the end of the year, as we got closer to the draft, the 4.0 that we put out for the 2018 NFL draft, Brandon had fallen a little bit on Baker. He went from 9 to 15. He rose on mine. He went from 22 all the way up to where Brandon had him in number 1, all the way up to number 9. And pardon me there, a little burp, little gas coming up out of my throat. But even that, even having him at 9 at the end of the year still seemed kind of low, because he was the number 1 overall pick. And I was one of the guys that I wouldn't take him number 1. If I was the Browns, I would have taken Saquon. And then with the 4th overall pick they had, I would have taken my share at the quarterback, because I didn't think Baker, I thought Baker was still going to be there. They could probably take him at 4. They didn't have to take him at number 1. Point is, they took Baker, and the rest is history. They got Baker Mayfield. They took Nick Chubb later, so I guess they got that running back, quarterback thing that I was looking for them in that draft. But even you look at Todd McShay and Mel Kiper, the big guns. You might be saying, well, Ricky, you're kind of a small wig. Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, they're the big guns. They're ESPN. Who did this one? Was it Todd McShay or was it Mel Kiper? Let's see. It was Mel Kiper. Did it way too early in May before the 28. Well, it was a 2018 way too early. And it was done May of 2017. So this would have been, right before the 2018 NFL draft. Baker wasn't even in the top 25. Was not even in the top 25. If we look at McShay's number 1 big board, or number 1 mock draft, which was posted December of 2017, he had Baker going 19th overall to the Chargers at the time, but basically I'm looking at the number 13. Mel Kiper on his 1.0 had Baker at 13. Yet again, these were both done in December. I think, was Mel's done in January? Mel's was done in January, so they were a month apart. But basically, they had him in the teens area, 13 and 19. End of the draft, he rose all the way to 1. And I know what you're saying, Ricky, why is Joe Burrow, why is it October and we're talking about Joe Burrow then being number 1? To me, it's because of what I said a little bit earlier. Baker only had a little bit of an increase and really was kind of like, yes, his passing number, his yards were better. He had more touchdowns, but he was really completing the same amount of passes. Joe Burrow looks almost to me like a different quarterback production-wise. His production is way better this year than it was last year. And the better thing is it's efficient. At 79.4? Yeah, 79.4 completions. He's throwing 218 attempts this season, which, let's put that in perspective of how many quarterbacks are, what their attempts are. Let me see if I can pull up the attempts. The quarterback who has the most attempts this season is Anthony Gordon at Washington State. He has 347 attempts. His completion percentage is a 70.9. That's actually really good for 347 passes. At 318, Joe Burrow has a ton of guys. A ton of guys ahead of him. I'm not going to count them all. But like, just looking here, some of the more notable guys that are in this quarterback race that have more than him. Justin Herbert has 232. Justin Herbert's only completing 68% of his passes. You also have Jacob Eason, another one people are throwing in to this quarterback race. 233. He's only completing 67% of his passes. Nate Stanley, who is not in the first round debate, but people like him as a late round quarterback. He's got 336, 62% is his completion percentage. And then, let's see, any of the other guys that are in the race? No, none of the others. Where's Tua? Tua's only thrown 194 attempts, and he's completing 74.7. So Tua is in the same boat as Joe Burrow. Not a lot of attempts, but he's completing them. And I know what you're saying. Well, Ricky, they've got good teams, good game plans, good coaches, and they're good quarterbacks. Of course, they're going to have high percentages. But I feel like Joe Burrow's on the meteoric rise he's on right now because of how much of a gap there is between these year's stats already, what they could be at the end of the year, and last year's stats. Like, give it 2 games, and Joe Burrow will probably break the amount of yards he had last year. He's already done it for touchdowns. He's got, 2 more interceptions, and he's even than last year. And the big thing that's different is his rushing, and that's where I almost got into it early. I'll get into it right now. The thing I like about Joe Burrow is I feel like the big thing this year that he's showing us is one of the things we harped on Lamar Jackson for is he's a runner, not a quarterback. And I'm not saying Joe Burrow was in that discussion, but we always look at these quarterbacks and their pocket awareness. Are they the guy that's going to stand there? Like Sam Darnold today in the Monday night game against the Patriots. There was a play, an interception that he threw back in the end zone where he threw it off his back foot. It was absolutely horrible. Sam, you're on my fantasy team. I love you to death, but it was a horrible throw. Good thing I didn't start you this week and I went with Phillip Rivers, but you're still my boy. I ain't going to drop you in that keeper league. I'm going to keep you because you're my rookie. Well, my sophomore, but you know what I mean. My young gun at quarterback. But point being, it was a bad throw. And you look, he had a wide open lane to the left. Instead of throwing off that back foot, could have stepped up, ran, got some yards from it. However, with most of these young quarterbacks, how much have you heard, oh, well, he gets a little frantic in the pocket and then scrambles out of it? I don't see that with Joe Burrow. However, what I do see and what this year kind of shows is last year relied on his legs, obviously, a lot more. The attempts that he had, let's see, let me pull up his attempts because I got rid of his stat page on my computer. Let's see, Joe Burrow. Let's go to stats here. Yeah, 128 attempts last year. So, like, he was obviously running the ball a lot last year. This year, only 39 attempts. He's not doing it as much. However, when I watch his film, the early film that we have, the thing that he does well is he can run. So it's like, hey, I'm going to stay here in the pocket. I'm going to first look to pass, but hey, I can use my legs. I can get into the end zone. I can do that. And in the NFL, that opens, we see all these RPOs, these run pass options to where he is going to, I think, fit like a glove in that system or in an RPO system because he's got the legs, so he can hurt you with his legs. Is it going to be Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick type of hurt you with their legs? No, but he's got that ability. So you got to prepare for that. He can also throw it down the field. So it's like he's the type of guy where he'll fake the handoff. Well, you got to keep the running back. You can't just leave him because what if he's going to hand it off? And then it's like, okay, I got to trust his legs because he can run it, but he can also pass it as well. And some of his great throws, he can throw on the run. And the thing that I love is his strength of, there were a couple where he can do Carson Wentz did this in the Sunday night game where he can even roll out. He's a righty, so he can roll out to, what would that be? Yeah, he could roll out to his left and turn his body and throw on the run. That's really hard. I could never do that. I would always be like, hey, I got to run with my body so I can have that throw. I couldn't turn my body enough as a young quarterback. Obviously, why I never played in college, never got to play in the pros because I wasn't good enough. But he can do that. And that's what I like. And I think that fits with what teams are trying to do in the NFL. The only thing is he's not in an offense that was like a Patrick Mahomes spread, a Baker Mayfield spread, a Kyler Murray spread offense. And I don't think that's going to hurt him, but it's a little bit different where he has the ability, but he's not going to be that guy that just huck it, chucks it 5,000 yards on a season. So here's the true question. Could he be the number one pick? Well, that becomes the debate of, is he better than Tua? And right now, if you look, I'm looking at Tankathon right now for this. On their big board, they got Joe Burrow, 4th overall, second best quarterback. Their top 3 is Tua, Joe Burrow, and then Justin Herbert out of the quarterbacks. If you look at their mock draft side, they've got the Bengals at 1, going with Tua Tagovailoa. They got the Dolphins at 2, going with Joe Burrow. And for me, I feel like we are primed for another, like, there's a part of me that thinks this year for quarterbacks is going to be, let's say it's going to be if you took that 2000 and, I gotta look up the years. One of them's the 2018 draft class. Because that was the one with Darnold and Rosen and Baker and Lamar. Got to look up the other one. Okay, so the 2 draft classes I think that this one's going to start to emulate is it's going to have a little bit of that 2018 class, but also a little bit of that 2015 class. And when I say that, think back to 2015. There were 2 big quarterbacks. There was Jameis and there was Marcus Mariota. And how I feel is you're going to get a little bit of that 2018 because I think Tua and Joe are going to separate themselves. They're going to be at the top, playing in the same conference, playing head-to-head. We're going to compare them a lot more. But Justin Herbert's still good. Jake Fromm is still good. Then you get to like the Eastern territory, the Eastern territory, the Jalen Hurts territory, where Jalen Hurts could be another one that I think will rise as the season goes on because he's been really good this year as well. The flair from the 2015, though, is I think that the big two at the top, we are going to compare Tua and Joe and dissect them and compare them. Which one goes number one? Which one goes number two? And that's why, could Joe Burrow be the number one pick? Yeah, I think he could. I think that he could have a same rise that Baker Mayfield had, where we're looking, I know, I'll be honest, my big board, I'm going to have him higher than I had Baker on my first one. And Baker, we did that in December. I'm going to do my first big board in October this year. For me, I really like what I see from him. I think that he's not a quarterback that's going to go out there and razzle-dazzle spread offense, but he's got the arm, he's got the body strength, he can throw on the run, he can run the RPOs that I think that I see when we watch NFL football on Sundays. The only question is, our team's going to look at him and want to draft him over a Tua Tagovailoa. Kind of the same thing we were looking at in 2018. It was Sam Darnold number one, Sam Darnold number one, Sam Darnold number one, until we got close to the draft. And it was like, oh, well, the Browns are looking at Baker, and they really fell in love with Baker. And then we're deciding, oh, well, Baker or Darnold, who would you take? Who would I take? And I think the same thing's going to happen here, where we've been talking Tua, to where as we get close to the draft, I expected somebody early on. I thought it would be Justin Herbert. I didn't expect Joe Burrow to kind of skyrocket and get the hype machine just going for him. But he has been, and he's been riding it. And I can't wait until that November 9th game. I'm going to fact check myself, MVP, you're wrong. I'm taking that from Kind of Funny. Shout out to you, Greg, Tim, Nick, Andy. All you guys are kind of funny. I love your podcast. But going to fact check myself. I said that Tua will probably miss the LSU game. He's going to play. I pulled up an article. This is from, let's cite my sources. That would be really good, right? Of course, it's Fox News from Alabama. They say that Tua expects to play. A quote that Terrell Lewis, an Alabama linebacker, told The Athletic was, he said, "I'll be back for LSU. I know how Tua is. It's something he's been through before, so I don't doubt the fact that he's a competitor. He's going to get right back. He'll be fine." Nick Saban added in his statement that Tua suffered a high ankle sprain against Tennessee. This was on Sunday, he said this. Our physicians performed a successful tightrope procedure on his right ankle this morning. This is the same injury, but the opposite ankle that Tua injured last season. Tua will miss next week's game, so this week's game, against Arkansas, but we expect a full and speedy recovery. So, kind of what they're thinking in Alabama. He'll miss the Arkansas game. Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback for that one. They have an off week before they play LSU. Hopefully he's back for that. They're thinking that he'll be back for that LSU game. So right there, boom, we get number one versus number two. And I don't think, did we see that? Did we see Mariota versus Winston? We did. It was that's right. It was in the college football playoff because Mariota won and then they went to play Ohio State and then Zeke went ahead and beat Marcus Mariota. So yeah, we're going to get to see Tua and Joe Burrow go head to head because I was kind of talking to one of my co-teachers at the school I teach at, big college football fan. And I even mentioned, like, man, if Tua misses that game and Joe Burrow wins it, like, what's that going to mean for Joe Burrow's draft stock? But it looks like Tua will be playing that game. So the question I want to throw to you guys, I've talked enough. If I'm going to answer it, could Joe Burrow be the number one pick? I think it is. I think we're already headed to it. It's going to be either number one Tua and number two Joe, or number one Joe, number one Tua. I think that's where we're headed. They're going to be the top two quarterbacks that we talk about. Justin Herbert will then be a third, because I just think Oregon's being forgotten this year with the loss that they had early on. They're not really, in my mind, not having that national spark. So Justin Herbert, I think, will be the third one. But, I mean, I think Joe and Tua are going to be the two we talk about all the way up into the draft. Unless, like, a Jalen Hurts throws his hat, pun intended, because he plays for Oklahoma, into that discussion. But I want to know what you guys think. Could Joe Burrow be the number one pick? Am I crazy for bringing up this hype topic on the podcast? Let me know what you guys are thinking, obviously, down below in that comment section.